Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 80. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Today's guest, we were just bullshitting for I don't know how long, but this is going to be a fun conversation because I think there's just going to be a bunch of connections and interests. So please go ahead and name and who you are.
My name is Dan Balaban. Thanks for having me today, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Who am I? In my professional life, I'm the CEO of Green Gate Power. In my personal life, I'm the father of 3 wonderful kids and I guess part-time Uber driver. kid Uber driver.
Yeah, right. No tips, no payment.
No tips, no payment. Just hopefully they pay it forward.
Right before we jumped on camera, you said you've seen a couple of these, so you kind of know what's about to happen-ish. So yeah, I think this is going to be... You're born and raised in Calgary?
I was born in Toronto, but I was raised in Calgary,
okay.
Yeah.
Which, and I think as we were just talking, you went to high school down the street. So this is all going to get intertwined somehow.
We're literally meeting at the halfway point between our schools, right? This is the neutral zone.
It's just so funny how you don't realize these situations just occur, right? For whatever reason, this platform is creating these weird opportunities. So it's just fun when you and I are in this middle zone, literally where we grew up going to high school. So.
Yeah, and it's been a wild journey in between high school to come back to where we are today. But totally. We're both back here, right?
Yep. Yeah, man. So this will be cool. So I like the guests to go back, and go back's a vague idea, but just how you grew up, where you grew up, what inspired you, your inspirations, how your parents kind of guided you. So take it back there, and then I'm just going to pull you along to where you are today. And where you are today is fascinating to me too, by the way. Like the industry you're in and what you're up to is. I know what's happening, so that's why this one's going to be fun. So, have at her.
Okay, no, appreciate it. So, I was born in Toronto. I'm the product of 4 grandparents that were Holocaust survivors. Unfortunately, none of them are alive anymore, but they were a big part of my life growing up. I'm actually the first of my entire family to be born in North America. Ooh. So I grew up with, tremendous amount of love from my grandparents, tremendous loving environment from my parents. And, it was also, pretty intense, I think, way of growing up. I learned from an early age that we can't take for granted the peace and solitude that we have in our lives today in Canada. I think we're very fortunate to live in the country that we live in. So you can't take that for granted. I was also taught, I think from a very young age that, it's important to, to find a purpose and, work as hard as you can to achieve your potential, for me to achieve my potential.
Dude, you're like, my brain's already firing. Finding your purpose. Was that like an intentional conversation that was being had back then, or was it just kind of, were you listening and watching, or how did that, that's an interesting word to use at a young age.
It is, growing up as a grandchild of Holocaust survivors, got the sense that kind of the life of, my predecessors in my family were cut short, right? And they never were able to realize their potential. So me, as kind of the first of the family to be born in North America, all the unfulfilled hopes and expectations were put on me. A lot of them were put on me. I'm the responsibility and sense of duty to honor the memory of the predecessors in my family, those that didn't survive that terrible human atrocity, and take this opportunity that I have to live in a wonderful country, free, and use it as a force for good. It was specific conversations about it, but it's kind of implicit just in the way I was taught, for sure.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right, keep going. I could ask you 5,000 questions right now, but just keep the story rolling.
Yeah. So grew up with that foundation. I grew up in Toronto, like I said. I spent until the age of 9 there. We had a family farm that we used to go to on the weekend. So rather than a cottage, we had like a farm that we actually worked. Like we grew stuff on it, and my dad turned the what was the former tool shed into our sleeping accommodations. It was very, very basic. We had an outhouse. It was wild. Like we left the city to spend the weekend there. That was just kind of the way my dad was. He liked the simpler life and tried to, share that with me. Some of those lessons have, continued to today. But then when I was 9 years old, my late father worked in the mining industry, worked for Noranda Mines. He got transferred out to Calgary in the mid '80s to run an oil and gas company, one of Noranda's oil and gas companies, and that's kind of what brought us out west. Yeah,
that farm, was it? It was probably unique, right? There's probably like a lot of your peers didn't have a family farm outside of Toronto, and
everybody had a cottage. They had the fancy cottages with the boats, but we had this like working farm. Yeah, it was like spent my childhood, playing in the dirt. Started driving the tractor by myself when I was like 6 years old. It was like weird, I don't know, for some reason my dad thought I was responsible enough to drive heavy equipment at that age, and I didn't get into any accidents, so he was
got all your
right.
limbs.
Yeah, I got all my limbs still. So yeah, it was great. It was a great way to spend the weekends when I was a kid. And when I moved to Calgary, we didn't have a family farm anymore, but it was great. Or in my formative days, for sure.
So when dad gets transferred out, it's kind of an interesting, like 9 years old. So I don't know what grade that is.
That'd be grade 4.
Okay, so you're still like you got friends, like you're kind of like building a foundation, but to be pulled across the country.
Yeah, but it's pretty easy to make friends at that age. So so I moved here. I had to. Obviously, it's scary, right? I think it'd be even scarier as an adult to to go through that situation. But a lot of people have been through it. So moved here. Made great friends, and I'm fortunate that a lot of the people that I was friends with, throughout elementary school and junior high are still like my best buddies, my crew.
Isn't that? It's very unique, isn't it? I'm the same way.
Yeah. And a lot of them moved all over, they've moved all over the world, different cities, have had different experiences, but, have come back here to Calgary. We still hang out. We have kids, and in some cases our kids are really tight. So it's, really cool to see that, that second generation going. And Calgary's unique like that. We're a big city, but also kind of a small town at the same time at a community level.
Is there other people in your world that have like elementary school friends, or is it kind of, are you unique in that way? Because I am, in my circle of friends, like when I'm telling people, I was walking down the street by my house last week, and I'm walking by this truck, and I'm looking at this truck, and there's a logo on it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, decent branding on their logo on their truck, and I'm looking through the window, and there's a guy sitting there. This guy George Boothman. I went to school with him in kindergarten, and here we are. I'm 46 now. And I see these people I grew up with in the same kind of neighborhood, within the 13-block radius of where I went to school. I just don't know if that happens like to everybody. If a lot of people have those similar experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not that frequent, because a lot of people don't end up, living in the town that they grew up, or the city that they grew up in. But yeah, it's very special. Some people would say that if you're still friends with the people that you were friends with when you were a kid, it means you haven't grown that much. But I would say that we've all grown together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool that we still have those those common interests. And it's great. It's like a big extended family.
So what's going on when you get to Calgary? Like, what are you interested in back then?
Like when sports? I was like going back.
When you're like
going
that
back.
age.
Yeah. Yes, I was always pretty into sports growing up. In junior high, we had a basketball team, and got really excited about basketball. And that's my favorite sport for sure. Used to love playing basketball, love watching basketball. I think sports is a really great way of teaching people life lessons. Sports is more than just about the game you're playing, the athletic competition. It teaches young people about the need to work hard. As a result of working hard, you can see, direct improvement, working together as a team, dealing with coaches, all those personalities. I think it's, tremendous life lessons. My late father was quite a active volunteer basketball coach in Calgary for many years. So I watched, the work that he did. I was very impressed with the sort of impact he had on a lot of people that even to this day come up to me and say, "Oh yeah, your dad was my coach, and I learned these things." And we really miss him. He passed away about 9 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
That the idea of like learning all those lessons, like in sport, that they're all transferable into the business world. When did you realize all those lessons you learned that you were learning as a youngster, actually they are lessons, and you do have an interesting skill set when you start getting into the work world? Did it take a while to figure it out that the two were connected?
No, I think it was, my father was a very wise man. My mother, still around, and love her, a very nurturing mother as well. But from the perspective of my father, he was always a very thoughtful person and taught me, some important lessons. So when I was doing something, he would remind me of the sort of things, that I was intended to learn from it. So yeah, I'd say I had a sense of awareness of those things from a pretty young age, because I was fortunate that I had, good guidance from my parents. And
That's unique.
yeah, I'm for sure. I feel fortunate to have had that.
Because a lot of people, I won't even generalize. Some people's experience is different because they have to kind of figure that out later by themselves and reflect back and then connect some dots. You were having those kind of conversations. There's some intent behind these conversations.
Absolutely, and I learned a lot from it. And I try to be the same way with my kids, but maybe not quite as intense about it. Like I think our job as parents is to really be observers and listeners, and kind of observe and see what our kids are naturally inclined to do, and provide them the opportunities to do that. Like my oldest daughter is really into performing and the fine arts, and so tried to encourage her and help her pursue that. My middle daughter, I used to watch her on the playground.
Yep.
When she was like a little kid, and she was doing crazy stuff on the bars.
Okay.
So she did competitive gymnastics for a while. Yeah, and she loved it. And my son, my boy, he loves basketball, just
cool.
like his dad.
So there's that.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah.
The passion for basketball. I just finished watching The Last Dance.
Oh yeah.
I just finished it yesterday. That's how far behind I am. Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah.
Was that so? For me, basketball was Sundays, watching the Bulls play. So that was what? So that was from 93 to 91 to 98 ish.
Yeah.
He obviously went and played ball and retired and did the rest of it. But
Yeah.
I remember it. That's when I was really into basketball. Basketball for me was Jordan on Sundays, and I was like, I didn't play basketball. I was never good enough to make junior high. Obviously didn't play in high school. Didn't have it in me. But Jordan was my entry into basketball, and when he stopped playing, I was done with basketball.
Jordan, this may be a controversial statement, but Jordan is the GOAT, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah,
and
I've never seen a competitor like that. Like, how many times? I also grew up watching Michael Jordan. Like, obviously an unbelievable athlete, but I think he had this like competitive streak that, like, he just refused to lose, right? Like, how many times did you see Jordan with the ball in his hands right at the end and made that shot, right? Like, so many times. Yeah, I've never seen a competitor in any sport, quite like him. Maybe there's Tiger Woods in golf. Another one that comes to mind, Wayne Gretzky in hockey. Yeah. There's also some great basketball players. Obviously, LeBron's a great ball player. Yeah. I don't know. I just think Jordan had this special something that I've never seen before.
And do you think it was?
Or again.
Do you think it was the time in our life? We were so You know, we were very, people just kind of, they could create more of an impact as we were youngsters, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're older now that LeBron and even Kobe, like we're older, we have our own lives, and you know, Jordan was just this like super being.
Yeah, but then then the generation before would say, oh yeah, it was like Wilt Chamberlain, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, maybe it's just because it's so burned into our minds. But I do think there is definitely some truth. That who's the GOAT is obviously going to be debated, but like his competitive fire and his competitive spirit and the stuff that he did in the air and the style that he did it with his tongue out, he just introduced this whole new element to the game.
That so when you're playing ball, junior high school, is it kind of the thing that gives you meaning? You know, as a youngster, is it part of your identity?
For sure, yeah. That's actually a good question. Yeah, and I think it's indicative of my type of personality as well, which carried through. I think in my professional career, yeah, I was super into basketball. I was, felt proud of it. I wasn't amazing, but I was decent. Not good enough to play university, but I had a good time playing ball, and yeah, definitely felt good about it. We won a city championship one year.
Oh, you did?
And, so we had some good times. With it, but then when I got into university. For one, it was difficult to manage, a time commit, at least for me, with, being able to play an extracurricular sport. I probably wasn't quite good enough to make it, so I played intramural basketball. And then it kind of like basketball kind of faded away, or sports kind of faded away. And then, tried to channel my own competitive fire, because I'm a pretty competitive person as well.
Is that an understatement?
yeah, just a little bit. I try to keep it in check now that I'm older, but I definitely tried to channel that towards business, and that became my new passion. Was business, and
did it give you that same? Did it give you the same like release, or just give you the same feels that you were looking for?
Yeah, maybe emotionally, yeah, for sure. I think it gave me the same type of release for my emotional and mental energy. But I wish I had a different story to tell, but I'm not great at balance. So I got really into work for a long time. Like
Sorry, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm going back to balance for sure.
Yeah.
Walk me through university. I'd love to hear what program you went into, what was interesting to you, and then why you kind of, why you chose that path.
Yeah, so I did. I went to the University of Toronto. So born in Toronto, moved to Calgary when I was 9. Then I moved back to Toronto for university. I went to the University of Toronto.
Based on, because they had a program you were interested in, based on just wanting to get back, just leave home for a while, or?
Well, I wanted to go to the best school that I could in Canada. And so I did a computer science degree, and University of Toronto, Waterloo. Those were kind of the top. And I was deciding back and forth between the two. My uncle and my dad both graduated from the University of Toronto. So
you went.
Continued the family tradition, went to University of Toronto.
Were you very capable in school? Like coming out of high school, did you have the marks to kind of pick and choose where you wanted to go?
I wasn't a great student, but I got good marks. I managed to get by. So I had good enough marks to get into pretty much any program. I wouldn't say every program, but pretty much any program in any school in Canada.
Yep.
So chose University of Toronto because I thought it was the best, and I had a little urging from my family.
A little bit urging, or were you cool with kind of continuing the family legacy?
I was cool with it. Yeah. Toronto was a great city to spend university in. Like we lived downtown Toronto. Had a lot of fun with my buddies. So my buddies from university. Yeah. Still friends with them too. I wasn't I was never a great student. I didn't really like school. I always saw school as a means to an end, and that was preparing me for something in business.
Yep.
That was always something I was interested in.
Yep.
So I managed, did okay. Probably didn't want to go to graduate school, never a goal. I just wanted to work. So I ended up getting a job while I was I think it was in my third year of university. I got a job at Ernst & Young, EY, a big professional services firm. And so I was going to school full-time, working like part to full-time.
Yep.
So, so I had a lot of fun in university. I did my share of partying and stuff, but, and actually I did have my setbacks. So I didn't do great one semester, and so ended up getting, taking a break for a semester from school just to try to get myself together in terms of what I wanted to do. So what I did for that semester is I drove an auto parts delivery truck.
Awesome.
Yeah, I got paid like $6 an hour, I think. After tax, it ended up being like $4. I don't know. Anyways, it wasn't a lot of money for sure. And drove around, delivering packages to these, garages, right? And I remember, and I had like 40 deliveries to do a day all over Toronto. Went into this one shop and something was messed up in the order. And the guy looks at me, he's like, "Are you some kind of idiot?" And that just like stuck in my mind. I'm like, this guy, who's working in the garage is calling me an idiot. And I just don't want to be part of, there's smart people who work in a garage. I'm not, but it's just like, I don't want to be around that scene where I'm like at the bottom of the rung, right?
They're assuming a bunch of things.
They're assuming a bunch of things
and then
because
just
I'm
giving
doing
it
this
to you.
and just giving it to me. So that was like, that moment was a wake up call. And then I was done with my break from school. I'm like, okay, I'm getting serious now. And that's, and I started getting, better at school, putting more focus on it. Got this job working at EY while I was going to school. And that really, I think, launched me to a, quick career progression, relatively quick career progression.
And that, the nonchalant attitude towards school, it just, because you knew that you just needed to get something, you needed this piece of paper so you can get to where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
Just that was just who you were. It's just
who I am. Yeah. I'm a pretty independent-minded person, and I like to do things for my own reasons. I have to, decide for myself that it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
So just like I didn't like people telling me what to do. I don't like people telling me what to do. I didn't like my teachers telling me
Join
what to
the club.
do. I don't like I didn't. So in my professional career, I've started multiple of my own businesses. I don't like to be told what to do. However, I did learn, and actually I always knew this. Find people that you respect as mentors, and I do listen. The people that I choose to listen to, but I have a hard time arbitrarily being told to do something.
It's an interesting feeling to navigate with life, right? Like for me, it was like coaches. If there was a good coach, loved it. I'm on board.
Yeah.
If the coach, if him and I didn't jam, man, it was just this authority figure in my life that just drove me crazy.
Yeah.
And then school is the same thing. These people telling me things I need to learn. I'm like, I'm never going to use this. When who are you? You're telling, like, there's no context here, and I feel the same way.
However, so now I see my own kids, right? So my oldest daughter is at U of C, just finished her first year of university.
Yep.
My middle daughter's at Western. My son's at Rideau in junior high, and then I hear them saying, "Well, why am I learning this? Because I'm never going to need this in real life." And what I tell them is like, you can't say that right now. You don't know. Like, keep your options open. Until you really, narrow in on exactly what you want to do. It's best to, to keep your options open. So, hopefully they're, a little more diligent at school than I was. But I got by. I did what I had to do.
Yeah.
Got through university. Got by. But just trying to, reflect on, how one grew up and, how you can improve on that and try to improve on that with
Which
your
is-
kids. Yeah.
I don't have kids, but I find that, being wired the way you're wired, that'd be an interesting experiment.
Yeah. So my kids are, can also be pretty strong-headed, but they're kind people. And, that's,
Yeah.
I think
in
what you can most, hope for in your children, healthy, kind
Yep.
people.
So you graduate university, still at
Graduate.
EY. What'd you graduate to? Computer science?
Computer science
Yep.
from University of Toronto, and so I was working at. There was overlap of about 2 years at the end while I was working and going to school, and so I graduated university in 95 or 96, around that time.
Yep.
And it was right around the time that this new technology called the internet was was rolling out, right?
Isn't that crazy to say out loud, though?
Yeah, I know it is. It's wild. It's wild.
And so what's your first experience with the internet? What's
Okay, so my first experience with the internet was when I was in university in computer science, and starting to talk about the internet. But the internet was not yet permitted to be used for commercial purposes. That didn't come until later on in the 90s. There was still this debate about was it just an academic tool or business tool, and then obviously the business business side of it won out. But I remember, I got to figure out how to get on the internet. So I remember I got, I think it was AOL.
Yeah.
I signed up for AOL, and they had like their own proprietary screen, and there was this one thing, web browser, and I remember clicking on it, and I'm like, okay, so that's the internet. Now where do I go, right? And then there was this. Then I see search engines, and there was this one search engine called Yahoo. I thought that was the best name, so I clicked on Yahoo, and then I just started typing. And there wasn't much on the internet at that time.
Computer lab at school, is that when you first?
Yeah, I
plunking
had a
away?
computer lab at school, and then I had it set up in my room in the house that we lived in, and yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous that was actually a time, like the start of the internet.
It's wild, and so my career, I've kind of made my career in disruption, right? I started my career, when the internet was in its infancy, and even though I was just, I graduated university. Nobody knew anything about the internet at that time. Like, it was all new. So I, relatively speaking, got to be involved in quite a number of really interesting, leading edge initiatives at EY, because I was one of the few people at that time who, knew about the internet, and I had great mentors at that job. My first boss was a wonderful guy. At EY, great mentor, and gave me the ability to kind of get into things and figure it out. Gave me a lot of rope, and
Cool.
And I didn't let him down. I did good work. Yeah.
So what were you up to? Like, what was it when you're like discovering the internet early in your career? What were you working on?
So I worked in the electronic publishing department of EY. And what they did is they distributed the updates to the Tax Act and other income tax things on CD-ROM on a quarterly basis, which was a novel thing on CD-ROM. So then when the internet started becoming more prolific, we migrated a lot of that content to the web.
Yep.
So I was involved in that, and then I got involved in some consulting projects, got pulled into some interesting consulting projects, worked on Canadian Tire, one of Canadian Tire's first e-commerce initiatives, one of the CRA's early e-commerce initiatives. So I got to be involved, worked on the Eaton's bankruptcy. Worked on some cool stuff early
like big
on.
brand things.
Oh yeah, big brand things.
Yep.
And really trying to apply this new technology to to solve business challenges. And because I was decent technically, but I think where I really stood out from a lot of my fellow classmates is my ability to communicate relatively well. compared to a lot of the computer science graduates at the time. So I was a good bridge between business and the technology.
Yeah. You could kind of listen to what somebody might want.
Yeah.
Understand what is possible technically, and then be able to articulate it in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that really helped me develop a phenomenal skill set at a early part of my career. It's just going into these situations, and I worked for EY. I also worked for PwC. I also worked for another U.S.-based consulting firm called Cambridge Technology Partners, which was founded on the campus of MIT. So I had my early career was in consulting.
Yep.
And so you go into a situation that you don't understand. You have to like figure it out really quickly and translate it into a way that can help a system be designed to solve that problem. So that was a great way of developing my career, because then I knew no matter what problem I was faced with, I had the skills to kind of break it down and figure it out.
So you bounced around between a bunch of big, like those are big consulting gigs.
Yeah.
All out east, or when did things...
So
what happens after that?
So then at the age of 24. So this is all. This is
quick.
Like I started working when I was 20, and till almost the age of 25, I was working consulting. Part of it while I was in school, part of it outside of school. But I really, I grew up with entrepreneurial father, who was tremendous influence that way for me. And I really had an entrepreneurial attitude. I couldn't wait for the opportunity to go out on my own and try something new. So
did he talk to you about that, or were you watching?
I spent a lot of time talking to him. Yeah, he was really tremendous mentor in my life. Probably, I would say my dad was probably the strongest mentor I had in my life. I've had lots, my mom, my grandparents, but my dad, for sure, my uncles and aunts, but my dad, I talked to him about a lot of this stuff for sure.
So you worked it out. You guys would just have these open discussions, working out these ideas or understanding that world and.
Yeah, and he always was very positive with me. Like always told me like you can do anything you set your mind to, Danny. And I believed that. I drank the Kool-Aid,
which is like, but it's hard not to when it's coming from your dad. Like, this person knows you, so
yeah, no, for sure. I was again very, very fortunate for that. Started a software company. So I left consulting, started a software company to try to apply internet-based technologies to the oil and gas sector here in Calgary. It was a sector that this is like going back to like 1999. We've got a long way to go still. Hey, we're at 99. We got awesome. 2 hours.
No problem.
So anyway, started...
Moved back to Calgary to start this?
Yeah, so I moved back to Calgary to start this. Okay. There was a period of time where it overlapped with my work in consulting. But ultimately, that's what brought me back to Calgary. And...
what was it called? What'd you call it?
Roughneck. Yeah, roughneck.ca was the name of the software. And what it did is it was an internet-based software application, cloud-based.
Oh, no way.
In 1999. But the cloud wasn't even a term that people were talking about. Like, to me, I just thought it was intuitive that rather than building like these client-server applications with like a heavy client and you do everything through the web browser. Right, and so JavaScript and Java and Cold Fusion was the language it was built in. But anyway, so it was all a web-based application. It took off, not right away, but there were some regulatory changes that happened, and it really took off. And and then I had an exit from that company. In 2005.
Yep.
And one of the things that my software did, it was an operations management suite for the oil and gas sector. And one of the capabilities of the software was to manage and report greenhouse gas emissions
Come in,
for oil and gas companies in the early 2000s.
it's early.
That's early, yeah.
Like that's early in that discussion.
That's early, yeah. So it's early on in the technology and especially early on in the discussion on environmental. So that helped me realize that there was, looming environmental challenges that the oil and gas industry was facing, the energy industry was facing, and had an exit from that company, a successful exit. And
Sorry, before you go there,
yeah,
I'd love to know, spinning up your first business. You had the skills to pull it off. Was it everything you expected? Was it smooth? Did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish, and you kind of like the plan was thought out and?
Yeah. So, no, I learned a lot, right? And I'm always learning a lot. I've been an entrepreneur since the age of 24, and I'm almost 49, turning 49 this year. So I've been an entrepreneur for almost solid 25 years. So, what I've learned throughout that journey, and, probably the first one taught it to me most intense, is that plans always get disrupted by forces outside of your control. You can have the best plans, best execution, but something outside of your control will derail those plans. So you have to be able to pivot. Yeah. So, that was a really important lesson. Everything takes a lot longer than you would hope or expect. Perseverance is absolutely key. I've had so many in my entrepreneurial ventures, multiple, near-death experiences from a business perspective. But for some reason, I've always found a way to prevail. And I think it's just, learning those lessons. In the case of Roughneck, my first venture, started up in 1999. There was a ton of capital available for, new software companies, kind of what we're seeing, now, but this is the first version. And then there was the .com bubble bursts. And then all of a sudden there was no capital. And, so had to navigate through all that. But, like I said, successful through it. Yep. And then, in hindsight, it was a bit of a crazy move, but had a successful exit from that. Knew the next business that I wanted to get into was something that would be an exciting business challenge, but also one that could help the environment.
Yeah, because I'm sure you were seeing the response from your software.
Yeah.
And was that conversation starting to heat up around the environment?
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Definitely it was starting to heat up around the environment. But this is, going back to the early 2000s, right? So it's still a while ago.
Yeah.
It's all relative, right? Like compared to where it's at today, it's it's a mainstream conversation. Then I think it was probably more of a niche conversation. But it was just, another thing, I guess, another really important thing I learned through my entrepreneurial ventures is it's really important to be passionate about what you do. So all those things, the perseverance, just generally the perseverance, the ability to persevere like that only comes if you can tap into something inside you that seems to give you like an extra level of energy and strength beyond what's normal. Because I find, being involved in disruptive entrepreneurial initiatives it takes a lot of energy. It's really, you need to put your all into it. So I was passionate about I've always been passionate about trying to use business to improve the world in some way.
Where does that come from? Did you say that now, obviously tons of experience. When did you realize that was a thought that you needed to dig into?
It's something that I've always felt. I think going back to the way I was brought up with, my grandparents being Holocaust survivors and my parents being, the product of that, and me being the first in North America, and just the way I grew up and the lessons I learned. I'm of Jewish background, and so a lot of really interesting things in that culture and that we learned. But one of the things is the concept of, it's called tikkun olam, repairing the world, and believe that we're all here I believe, and I was taught that we're all here to leave the world better than it was before we got here. And it doesn't have to be in business. It can be in any way that you want to apply it, like as an artist, as a politician, as a customer service agent, as somebody doing podcasts, right? Like, or a business person, or a spiritual leader. Think of any role that you have. I think if you can leave the world better through passing lessons along to people, leaving my case, what we're doing now, massive renewable energy infrastructure, those are all things that better the world, I believe. And so if you can find one of those things that you're passionate about, that's a pretty awesome thing.
Does that start tying into purpose?
Yes.
Is that kind of where that conversation kind of gets to come together?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's really important to live one's life with purpose, and if you're going to be in business, I think that purpose is more than just making money. Obviously, you're in business to make money, but I think also to if you look at it from a lens of what am I doing to make the world better in some way. It doesn't have to be lofty, but whatever it is. I think if you can look at things from that type of lens, it will enable you to tap into things that you might not otherwise be able to.
Interesting. And that could be that extra energy or that perseverance to actually make it all happen.
Yeah. And one's purpose can oscillate too, right? Like, life has, various phases, and I think the purpose could shift, right? Like the specific purpose, right? But I think those guiding principles, I think, are pretty important.
So the second company, you see an opportunity, tech, the environmental conversations getting going. What do you spin up?
Yeah, so had my exit from Roughneck.
Yep.
And I knew that. So I had some capital. I knew the next thing that I wanted to do was something that would be exciting, like I said, exciting business challenge, and something that could also leave a lasting positive environmental impact on the world. Because that was something I've been passionate about for a long time, and got reminded of that through my professional experience. Looked around, started doing my research like a consultant, would do. And then I got involved in some relatively small real estate development projects. Like building houses and stuff like that. So kind of when I get bored, I've done that a few times. But then I read this newspaper article about this group of entrepreneurs from Calgary that had developed a wind farm and sold it for a profit. And it just it was like an aha moment for me. I'm like, that's what I should do. I should apply my development skills to renewable energy. And so with no previous experience in the power sector, I pretty much took all the money I had made on Roughneck and started Greengate in 2007 with the goal of building out large-scale renewable energy projects, competing against multi-billion-dollar incumbents. Figured how hard could that be?
Hey, way you go.
Yeah.
I had no idea it goes back that far.
Yeah.
2007.
So 2007, yeah. Started in 2007. My co-founder, my brother Jordan, who had just graduated school at that time, and we started. My dad was a great early mentor in the business for me as well. But yeah, basically went into that, and so even though I had my first entrepreneurial venture, Roughneck, and lived through the ups and downs, I had no fucking clue what I was getting into with this thing. It was it's been a really, really wild ride, right? So go back, think of starting a renewable energy company in Calgary of all places in 2007.
It shouldn't be on the board. Like that shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be on the board. But had a vision of what was happening. Like there was, renewable energy has been going, a growing industry for quite a number of years. Like even preceding 2007, right? Like there was stuff going on in Germany and California and Ontario. There were these places that were taking, early action on climate change. And, even Alberta. Alberta was one of the first places in North America to see utility scale wind projects like down in the Pincher Creek area.
Yeah.
That was like some of the first ones in North America, but it never really took off the way it could. So, I saw what was going on elsewhere in the world. I'm like, well, we should be doing that in Alberta.
And literally somebody else, wherever they were, Germany, California, wherever, they were putting large infrastructure into areas that was going to be for renewable energy, whether it's wind farms, solar, or whatever it was.
Well, so what was happening early on? So the industry's been around for decades, and originally the industry was built on on the backs of jurisdictions that wanted to take early action on climate change. So those places that I mentioned, California, Ontario, Germany, there's other examples, but just, those three,
Yep.
They had like government programs where the government would offer long-term, what they're called power purchase agreements, where they would guarantee to buy the power from the projects, for like 20 years at fixed prices. And so on the back of those contracts, projects were able to get financed. As a result, tremendous improvements in the R&D, investments in R&D, tremendous improvements in the technology of all those things. And it really improved significantly to the point that it became, renewable energy became cost effective on a standalone basis without any, government subsidies of any kind. Like in the last couple of years, the International Energy Agency, the IEA, declared solar the lowest cost source of energy we've seen in the history of, human civilization, right? So it's a really disruptive force. But early on, it was helped out by, these government policies.
Yeah.
Saw what was going on. Alberta is the only free electricity market, deregulated electricity market, free market principles in our electricity market in Canada. So I thought, well, if the renewables is starting to become competitive on a standalone basis, industries needing to decarbonize, Alberta is a great place to do it. We've got tremendous land base, tremendous renewable energy resources. Like it's really well known that Alberta's got a ton of oil and gas, right? And I'm in favor of continuing to develop our oil and gas resources. Like the world's still using oil. We're transitioning our energy system, but it's going to take time. And I think as long as the world is using oil and gas, it should be Alberta oil and gas. We're very responsible in the way we produce it, but the shift is happening, right? And anyways, I've always been interested in the disruptive side of things. So what we did is, so we took on a very ambitious program in a way that had never been done in Alberta before. So at the time that we started investing in renewables in Alberta, at the time, the system operator, the organization that's responsible for operating the wires, the things that carry the electricity to our homes, the transmission system, they had put a moratorium on new wind development. They said, we're not going to allow more than 900 megawatts, that's the unit you use in power, of renewables on the grid. And everybody was like freaking out about that, right? And everybody was kind of like stunned. I'm like, okay, that's the moment for us to make an aggressive move, because didn't see how that was like sustainable. It just wasn't a very, very good optics. So we went out and acquired like 200,000 acres of wind land across the province. It was like one of the biggest land acquisition programs, I think, in the history of the province in any industry.
No way.
And secured this really great base of land, started permitting the projects, developing those projects. Things were looking very bright. And then we got hit with the global financial crisis in 2008.
And you're in deep by this, but like,
Oh, I'm in deep. I'm in deep. Yeah, I'm like all in, and then the financial crisis hit in 2008, and I'm like, okay, I'm willing to put a lot of money, but I'm like, I don't want to like, mortgage my house. That was my,
that was your no-go.
Yeah, but I didn't have a choice in 2008. There was basically nowhere to raise money. Like, went from like lots of money to it's shutting down overnight. It was like the .com bubble bursting again, and this is in 2008. We're in 2023 now, but it still seems like yesterday. So I went all in. I mortgaged my house, like completely, like all in on this thing, and to the point where failure is not an option. I could have made a different decision, I guess, in 2008. Say, well, pack it up, and come back at a different time. But fortunately, that's not the decision I made. Yeah.
That like to go that all in, to go to your no-go zone, which is the mortgage of the house.
Yeah.
How uncomfortable was it? Like,
it was very uncomfortable. Yeah, very uncomfortable. It was like a very, very intense period for me, for sure. But yeah, no, I got through it. Yeah, no, it was felt like a tremendous weight, I mortgaged my house. It also raised, capital from, third parties, and this huge responsibility to try to make this thing a success.
Yep.
We were able to, like, through some really, wild ups and downs. We were able to ultimately get our first project off the ground, which was at the time the largest wind farm in the province.
Where's that one?
That's in, we don't own it anymore. We were the developers of it, and we sold it to a big utility when it was at the start of construction. But that's in the county of Paintearth.
Okay.
About 150 kilometers east of Red Deer. So it's the central Alberta. And then, so that was the largest wind farm in the province. Then we followed that up with what at the time was the largest wind farm in the country. So we're able to get that off the ground. Now we have a number of other projects that were being constructed, but we followed that up with what is the largest solar farm in the country. We developed that project. It was just completed at the end of last year.
No way.
A project called Traverse Solar.
Oh.
We developed it. Amazon's buying most of the power that's produced from it.
That was massive.
That one's massive.
For context, just like say, I don't know what the square footage or how you articulate how big it is.
Yeah, so it's it's a 3,300 acre solar project with 1.3 million solar panels. In Vulcan County, Alberta, so between here and Lethbridge. To put that into perspective, it's like a third of the size of the island of Manhattan. So you just like kind of go from Central Park. If you've been to Manhattan, like Central Park South, cover that all with solar panels. That's like that's the size of the project. It's pretty amazing, amazing site. And I think it's so again we were the developers of the project. We brought in a big investor to fund the project at the start of construction, so we don't own it anymore. But it's part of our legacy for sure. We're really excited about it. It produces enough energy, like the equivalent of 150,000 homes, and it's what a cool thing, right? Like in Alberta, we have the largest, what was at the time the largest wind farm in the country. We now have the largest solar farm in the country by far. Very different look for Alberta, right? And I think, I'm really proud of, I think the work that Greengate, my team, has done has, really paved the way for, a lot of other projects to be built. Renewable energy is booming now in Alberta. Alberta, which used to be, Canada's oil and gas capital, I think is truly becoming Canada's energy capital with, the tremendous renewables growth we're seeing and the oil and gas. And I think it's great for our economy. It's great for the environment. It creates jobs. So talk about passion. Yeah, I was super passionate about all that work we've done. Really proud of it.
How does the idea of starting a business with your brother, family dynamics, the ups and downs of this, like that energy industry, what is it without family? Do you get through it? With family, does it kind of let you scale it to where it is right now? Like, where does that piece fit in?
Yeah. So in my case, I've been working with my family for a long time. So, like I said, my late father was a great mentor for me. I co-founded Green Gate with my brother Jordan. My other brother Mike was also involved in the business. It was tremendous. Like, it has its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
But I'd say in our case, it's been very successful. Like, there's a level of trust I feel like you can have with family that's difficult to replicate with others.
Yep. Did you know that, coming up with the idea to start this business, that you needed that support, the family support, or was it just like there was a skill set there and you're like, we can pull this off?
It was, I've always been very close with my family. So, I think it was great. My brother was graduating school with the right skill set. My other brother, had skills to contribute to the company as well. And I guess it was just naturally my first stop. But we hired. I've been forced to work with a lot of other people that are not family that have been great. And I think I'm fortunate that both my brothers are bright, hardworking individuals that are really, really dedicated. So it's enabled us to get through what was at times a really scary ride. So it's great. In my case, I think just the nature of the way we grew up.
Yep.
It worked. And just the way our relationship. It doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for us so far.
So far.
Yeah.
That riding those ups and downs, being a business owner and in this industry that's growing and changing. People see, I've been on this conversation thread for the last few guests. People see you at the end of it, right? They see you of what you've created and what you're working on and the projects. They see that piece. All the moments to get to that place, I feel like those ups and downs. What is it that you touched on it earlier? Is it just that internal? It's your purpose, it's your passion, and you're just willing to go through those ups and downs? Like, is that the?
Yeah. So I think for any new entrepreneur, I think it has to start with passion, because, like I said, I think with passion lets you tap into that extra bank of energy. So you have to have passion. It helps to have great mentors to bounce things off of. But I think passion is tremendously important. Without passion, it's very difficult to persevere through challenging times. But being an entrepreneur is not an easy path. It's glamorized for sure, and I bought into that very early on. I was all excited about it.
Own boss, own schedule, own holidays, whatever.
But you're living and dying by your own sword, right? There's nowhere to hide, right? When you're in a big company, you're like, oh, I wish I could do my own thing. But when you're a big company, you can hide, right? Something goes wrong, you don't really know, whose fault. It's not going to be fatal to the company. Everything goes on, right? But when you got your own entrepreneurial venture that you're leading, you got your own money, you've got investor money in the business. It's a huge, huge responsibility. And if something goes wrong, it stops with you, right? The global financial crisis had nothing to do with me, yet it had a huge impact on my business. And ultimately it was on my shoulders to try to figure out a solution to that. And great family support, great great support all around from the people that you love is important. But yeah, just being able to go and tap into that is really key, I think.
The idea of like it all stops, like live and die by your sword. No, and this is like my own personal question that me started my own thing and kind of trying to figure this out on the fly. Is it finding mentors that you can have those honest conversations with when you can tell somebody like, hey, I'm feeling this, like there's nowhere. Who do you need to talk to when you're about to deal with some difficult times?
Yeah, so in my case, I had a peer group that I was involved in. I used to be part of Entrepreneurs Organization, EO.
Oh yeah.
We had a forum that I was part of for many years, and that was a great way of sharing experiences, because I think entrepreneurs have unique set of experiences. Everybody has a unique set of experiences, but entrepreneurs do too.
Yep.
It's a very intense lifestyle. There's work-life balance. There's wellness versus work considerations. So, having that sort of peer group, my board of directors, was a great sounding board. Some of my key advisors, like lawyers, bankers. But I think for me, it's, in my case, having my family involved in the business as well. I had people that I love that I was able to, to share some of those ups and downs.
You can be honest.
Ups and downs with, yeah.
I wanted to drag you back to a point because it's fascinating to me is the balance piece. You were going to get into balance, and I'm curious because I've had the balance conversation with numerous guests.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear your where you're going to take that.
I suck at balance.
and you know it though, right?
Yeah, I know it. But I am actively working on improving my balance. So, I've chosen an entrepreneurial career of taking on these disruptive initiatives. In some cases, quite large, like the largest projects in the history of the country, in the backyard of multi-billion-dollar incumbents that don't always have an interest in success of others. So I chose this crazy path, and in order to be successful in it, I felt like it was all-consuming for me. In some cases, the expense of my interpersonal relationships. Like I'm divorced. I have 3 kids. They're with me. I have them 50% of the time, which is great. But anyways, I'm divorced. I'm still fortunately, on good terms with my kid's mom. It's all amicable, able to sort through that. But it takes a toll on interpersonal relationships. I have a new partner, wonderful woman, Marion, in my life now. But I think it's important to not become consumed by business. I'm almost 49 now, and I'm looking back. I have the opportunity to reflect, and it's been a wild ride, but it's not the most important thing in life. It can sometimes feel like it, but it's not.
Do you think without that imbalance, as you were building this business, do you think it actually could have got to where it is right now without, like if you were trying to look for balance while you're building it, could you have got to where it is today?
If I was, very deliberate about carving out like me time, which is difficult to do. Like, when you've got so many competing interests for your time. And, when you're, building a company, everything's like on fire, right? All the time. So like everything's a high priority. But I think it's really important to prioritize me time, a small amount of me time over anything that comes up in business. It's a technique I'm trying to work on, right? Yeah. But like certain things that you do for yourself. Yeah. That don't get knocked out of your schedule because there's a more important business priority. And whatever that is, like I think trying to balance, like I think time to take care of your physical health. Physical health helps your mental health, which helps your performance in general. So I'm going through a bit of a transitionary period for me. At the end of last year, we closed a couple, very large transactions. So, and one of those transactions involved half of my team, including one of my brothers, going over to the buyer of that portfolio, and I'm very happy with how that's going. My team's happy, but it's this time. It's giving me this time of much more intense reflection, and Marion, my partner, has urged me to make sure that I take care of myself as well as taking care of my business affairs.
And that it's not an oversight, but just the way you built it, right? It wasn't on the radar as a priority for me. No, listen, I'm not playing in like any space that you are at any level, but my thing for me is I ride my bike every single morning, like 5 days a week.
Well, it's brilliant.
And for me, just starting out, it just kind of gives me this time by myself to just think and just rattle through different ideas, and for whatever reason, to your point, lets me sleep better. I can function like my brain is working. So
yeah,
it feels like an important thing to start with.
Absolutely. I think having that in your life is really important. I kind of lost a little bit of that for a while. Mm-hmm. I've had my periods of time where I was focused on it, and was able to manage both. But I'd say most of my career hasn't been well balanced. Yeah, and now I'm trying to to focus on it more, and COVID was also quite a game changer, I think, for a lot of people. Terrible, a lot of human tragedy that came out of it. I know people that lost parents and lost friends, and it's really, really terrible. And then the lockdowns, which really disrupted people's livelihoods, which also really sucked, and the polarization in our society. So a lot of things about it sucked, and we're still dealing with it. But I tried to find the silver lining in things. So for me, it was like a reset of the way I was doing things, right? Like I was living in the office, and after work going out. Still I had to manage my kids. So my work-life balance is, oddly enough, it improved when I went from being partially responsible for my kids on a full-time basis to being fully responsible for my kids on a part-time basis, like half-time. That really, so when I unfortunately got divorced, that introduced that change, which was a positive thing for myself, my work-life balance. So the last several years have been better. But then COVID was a whole other thing, right? So instead of having to go into the office all the time and just doing what we do and going out after work for drinks and whatever, and just living that whole life, having all that extra time, not going into the office every day and being able to manage the affairs. And in our case, like, our business was really well suited for remote work. And we actually had some very successful years, in our case, during COVID, and that helped me kind of change that. And then now I'm kind of, with these transactions we did at the end of last year, I'm also trying to, to focus on more balance as well. So, if we have this conversation again in a year, I'll let you know how it's going.
Well, I was just going to ask you, if people ask you, whether youngsters or other business owners are asking you, like, is this conversation about balance, it's like top of mind for you right now? Is it something you actually talk to people about thinking we should do?
Yeah, I think it's very important in order to make your business career, your entrepreneurial journey sustainable. Yeah. I think balance is key.
Or something close to balance, whatever that means.
More balance, yeah. Balance doesn't need to mean equal. Yeah. But being deliberate about carving out time for yourself and taking care of your own wellness, I think, is really important. We work until we're in our 60s, and then we have time to finally enjoy life. No, I don't think I don't think that's the way it needs to be in today's modern world with all the tools that we have for remote work. And yeah, so I think we can do both, and hopefully I'll be able to do both more successfully going forward.
I'm going to ask you in a year where you're at.
Yeah.
This has been really cool, man. I appreciate your time. Story's really cool to hear because the space is genuinely like really interested in. So to understand how it started was really cool. I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
Opportunity. And fucking cold. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
No, but opportunity. Calgary for a really long time has been, the place that people come to in Canada when they're trying to pursue an entrepreneurial venture or try to get their lives going. I'm also fortunate. I'm on the board of Calgary Economic Development, so I'm a big fan of Calgary. I think we're going through some really interesting changes. We're moving from economy that was for a long time dominated by the oil and gas sector to one that's much more well diversified, with the oil and gas sector remaining an important part of our economy. But there's lots of things that are driving prosperity now in this city. We, one of the best cities in the world for quality of life, according to The Economist. Story's starting to get out there. It's an affordable place to live, great place to raise a family, and full of entrepreneurial spirit. So Calgary is opportunity.
That's cool, man. Yeah, it's such every answer is always a little bit different. The word opportunities definitely come up often with the entrepreneurial people I've had on the show, so it makes a lot of sense. Thanks again for your time.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.